I'm female, 30. My husband, Jaylen, male, 28, has ruined my life and poisoned my family against me. I've been going through hell for the last 3 months and have had no support from my family because they chose to believe his lies. Now, it turns out that he's duped them and my family wants to reconnect with me. AITA for telling them that they've burned all bridges? For context, Jaylen and I married at 18. We were sure of our love and didn't want to wait. My parents were initially hesitant and didn't really approve, but my husband won them over by being super charming and caring. I think the biggest turning point in their opinion of him came from the fact that he chose to work two jobs while I could focus on college, allowing us to live alone and work towards saving money. It was a huge sacrifice on his part, and it allowed me to earn and get into the field I love. However, after I graduated, things slowly started becoming worse and worse. I don't think Jaylen and I have gotten along for the last 4 years. Things have just been hanging on by a thread. The first reason for our arguments and relationship trouble was Jaylen's resentment of me. He and I make about the same amount of money right now, but he's pretty much reached the ceiling of his earning potential, while I have a long way to go before that happens. I admit this is in part due to the fact that Jaylen didn't go to college for me, but I have tried to convince him to attend community college or even go all out and get a degree. We're in a position where we can do that. But he's afraid to be judged and also thinks that he won't get the kind of college life I did. Me going to college has become a large part of his frequent lashing out and demeaning of my capabilities. I remember once we had a huge fight because he insinuated that I slept around during college because, in his words, who doesn't? I have been loyal to Jaylen during our entire relationship. The second issue came from how he tended to butter up my parents, which went way beyond trying to build a relationship and more towards trying to cut me out of my own family. In living room debates, or even general family issues, my husband took the side of my parents against me, even if I knew he felt differently. He always said that he only did it to make sure he stayed on their good side, but I knew it was overkill. Honestly, I wouldn't even care if he wasn't on my parents' good side because, like, what would they even do? When I bring that up, Jaylen then mentions how he doesn't have a proper relationship with his parents. They are no contact and have been since he was 17 or so. And this family makes him feel at ease, which isn't something I want to take away from him. However, it just feels weird to see my parents prioritize my husband over me. My dad goes on trips with him and says, "No girls allowed," like a 5-year-old, and my mom also takes his side when I rant to her. It's not like I've forgotten about them. I make efforts to keep in touch, but it just doesn't work. 3 months ago, I found out that Jaylen was cheating on me with one of his coworkers after one of his friends told me about it due to his troubled conscience. I just had a dull kind of pain about it, and when I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. Instead, he fully accepted his part in it and tried to gaslight me into thinking I was to blame. He said, "OP, this marriage drove me to it. I'm a good man. I wouldn't have done this if you weren't so distant. Yes, it was a mistake to cheat on you, but this relationship has been dead for a while." I don't disagree with him, but when I said, "Why not go for an amicable divorce instead of breaking my trust and my heart?" he had no response. He said he'll move out and I can have the house, and ended up leaving that very day. I called my parents to tell them the news literally just a few hours after this conversation to find out that Jaylen was living with them. He was living in my childhood home after having successfully made my parents condone his cheating. I couldn't even believe it. I knew my parents were going to be sympathetic to him, but to this extent? Their daughter had been cheated on and they were housing the dude? I asked them whether they even wanted to hear about my side of things, but they said it wasn't about the divorce, it was about everything else, refusing to elaborate. They cut the call. It's been months now of divorce proceedings and alienation from my family. Jaylen was staying with them, and the only people on my side were my friends. I don't know what kind of sob story he told them, but it was damn effective. I met my teen sister by chance at a mall, and she barely made eye contact with me. Just before the divorce got finalized, though, Jaylen stopped appearing for the divorce hearings. His cell was unreachable, and even his lawyer didn't know where he was. I had half a mind to call my parents and ask them, just so I could move the process along faster, but that would have been very, very awkward. They saved me the trouble by calling me, though. My dad was holding back tears as he told me that Jaylen had taken everything from the home safe and skipped town with his mistress. He told me that Jaylen had asked to store some of his valuables in the safe Dad has in his study, and he gave him the code. Today, after my parents came back from an outing, they saw the safe empty and my leech of a husband nowhere to be found. After checking the home security footage, it confirmed their suspicions. I couldn't help but scoff at them after all of this came to light. I told them that if it took that much for them to call their daughter after 3 months, then I'm no daughter of theirs. It's their problem as far as I'm concerned. Then I hung up the call. Ever since then, my sister and my cousins have been texting me saying that my parents regret the choice they made and really want to speak to me. I haven't budged an inch, though. But now I feel like I should at least speak to them once, if only to hear what they have to say. Update 1. I did end up speaking to my parents, but it was for a very pragmatic reason. I suddenly had an idea about using a PI to try and figure out where Jaylen went. His cell number is obviously gone, but there are a lot of other hints a PI could pick up on. A police case has also been registered, but it's going to take a long time before it shows any proper results. It seems like my ex-husband was planning this for quite some time. My parents aren't wealthy, and the stuff in that safe is of great value to them. Things like Dad's vintage baseball cards, some jewelry, stuff like that. I cooperated with them regarding ideas on where Jaylen could have gone, then floated the option of a PI. It would help me too, because I would love to see my scumbag of a husband thrown in jail. And it also would hopefully help me build a strong case to fast track my divorce. But my parents took me talking to them as a sign that I was okay with building a bond with them. I wanted to say it hurt when I shut down my mom's tearful apologies with a brief, "save it." But I honestly couldn't muster any emotion inside of myself. I spoke to a friend of mine who used to be an ex-detective, and he gave me the number of a very reputable PI. We're going to go to him and see if there are any results about where Jaylen had gone and how we can bring him to justice. Update 2. This PI was amazing. I'll keep it brief, but Jaylen has been caught in a motel a few states away. We found out because the investigator looked at pawn shops in and around our county to see if anyone matched my soon-to-be ex-husband's description. From there, he figured out what kind of car he was in, and the police were able to put out an APB that caught him in his tracks. The first thing I did when I saw that jerk in the holding cell was flash him the biggest smile I could muster. I hope he rots in jail for years. After his conviction, I basically got an automatic at-fault divorce due to his theft, and my parents got their prized possessions back. After this whole traumatic incident, my parents still tried to keep bonding with me and even used the shared experience of finding a PI and waiting to catch my husband as some kind of glue that should keep us together. But I read everybody's comments, and I know that I do not want them back in my life. I was cold, clear, and calm. I will be taking a new job far away from my hometown, and I urge my family to not contact me again. I explained that it was for the best and I would not want anything to do with them. If I ever feel like I'm ready to talk to them again, it's my call, and they need to respect that. Update 3. I can't begin to describe how free I feel. All my stuff is packed. I sold the house, which I got in the divorce, and I'm moving out of here. I am untethered, but that's a good thing. Wish me luck with the big, scary future, Reddit. NTA, how could you even begin to think you're the a-hole? I'm so disappointed in your parents for not even comforting you after you got cheated on. Your marriage seemed like it was on the rocks for a long time, but believe me, there is no excuse for cheating. Honey, I'm so sorry for you. You've been dealt a bad hand in love and in family, I feel. Your parents are gullible people, and you are right to feel bitter and not trust them or want them. But it's good that you keep the door open because maybe 10 years from now you may feel differently. I hope that getting away from everything will help you heal. Of course, NTA in my book. Next story. When I, 21, female, was 18, I was forced to marry my husband, Neil, 28. Up until a few weeks ago, I thought he was also forced to marry me. He asked me to find some pictures from his old phone, and I found messages between him, his father, and my father around 6 months before the wedding, where they were discussing the wedding. I had only been told 2 weeks before and was led to believe that he had too. Instead, he knew at least 6 months in advance, and that when my dad had told his friends and family that he planned to marry me off. My husband actually offered himself up as the groom because he thought I was attractive. Naturally, I was heartbroken. When Neil and I were newlyweds, I was a wreck. He was so patient and kind, and we bonded over us both being forced into the relationship, which I found out now is a lie. He provides for me completely, regularly buys me gifts, and is, in general, a very loving partner to me. He also put me in therapy for my unresolved mental health issues from my teenage years. I felt completely betrayed, and he apologized to me profusely. He paid for my flight to go and stay with my brother because I wanted space, and after some consideration, I decided to let it go. I know my decision sounds ridiculous, but I can't change the past, and I'm happy now, regardless of what happened. For practical reasons, it also wouldn't make sense for me to leave him because I'm still a student and I don't have any savings. We began counseling and have been making a lot of progress. My father and I had a very difficult relationship, and when he forced me to marry Neil, I was actually supposed to be living with him for university. I had previously been with my mother and her husband, and the environment was hellish. So I was extremely excited to move in with my dad after years of us not speaking. It was all actually a ploy to marry me off. I didn't speak to him for a few months after the wedding. Neil fully supported me. But I eventually forgave him because Neil turned out to be the perfect partner. Now that I found out that my dad actively deceived me into believing Neil was also forced into the marriage, I've decided I no longer want a relationship with him. I called him today after avoiding him for a few weeks and told him that I knew the truth and that I no longer wanted to speak to him. I also told him that I had chosen to forgive Neil and we were going to work through it together. He said that I was being unfair as I was letting Neil off but choosing to undo all the work I did on my relationship with him. He also said that since I'm happy now, I have no right to punish him for making me happy, forcing the marriage, and I had no right to let Neil off for the same thing. AITA for choosing to cut my dad off, but forgiving my husband for the same thing? I mean, no. I don't think you're an a-hole in any way in this situation, but this is predatory as frick for your husband to accept an arranged marriage and actively plan and build your relationship on a lie. At least both the fathers were transparent about their role and choice, but your husband pretended and trauma bonded with you when he is a grown-ass man taking a girl as his wife when he's willing and you are forced. Way above Reddit pay grade. Please seek more counseling for yourself. Edit. You are NTA, but you're wrong about your husband being different than your father. He is an a-hole just like every other adult in this story. ESH. They both deceived you. I'm glad your husband is nice to you and treats you well, but he wants to marry you because he thought you were attractive and wanted to bed you. He supports you cutting off your dad because that's one less person in your life. Don't be surprised if Neil marries off your daughter if you have one, because if he's okay deceiving you into marriage, he'll have no problem doing it to your daughter. You might end up agreeing to it because you seem to think a marriage based on lies is okay. I know you now love your husband, but if a friend told me what you've written out here, I would be offering her a place to stay for as long as she needed. This is horrific. And honestly, I think what your husband did is worse. He lied to you. He wanted you because you were a pretty 18-year-old. I understand wanting to stay because you have no money. So if you don't want to leave now, try to find a job and lock down your birth control. Don't let your husband know you have it, because I have a big feeling that you will find yourself pregnant soon after you graduate. Next story. I'm 56, male. My son, 29, male, is quite an irresponsible person. He doesn't care about anything or anyone. In his world, there is only him and no one else, and for that very reason, he was kicked out of his apartment. His landlord was quite clear when he told him that he didn't want scandals in the place or complaints from the neighbors, and what did he do? He threw a party, and two of the guests ended up in a fight. Even the police were involved. It was terrible. Of course, his landlord found out and kicked him out in the blink of an eye, which is completely legal here. Well, the thing is that now he has nowhere to go, and he asked me if he could stay at my house. And without even thinking about it, I said no. I don't want him here because he doesn't get along with his siblings. 9 female, 6 male, 5 female, or my wife, 38 female. All because he keeps blaming her for breaking up his family, which is a lie because when I started dating my wife, I had already broken up with his mom, 55 female. But he doesn't want to believe me. He treats her badly all the time. She and our children have cried because of him on more than one occasion, and I'm sick of him. My wife and I have been together for 17 years, and I think it is time for him to get over it and understand that she is here to stay, and that until he learns to respect her, he cannot stay here. I told him that, and I also told him it's time to grow up and learn that he's not 18 anymore, to act like a teenager, that he can stay in a hotel until he gets a new apartment. And of course, he got mad at me and told me that I'm a horrible father, that everything I'm doing is because my wife manipulates me and things like that. But I'm not going to change my mind because honestly, I'm sick of him and I can't tolerate his behavior anymore. AITA? NTA for not letting stay. He put himself in this situation and can face the consequences. However, the way you talk about him seems pretty harsh for a dad. Are you sure there isn't some truth to some of the dynamics he's upset about? NTA for not letting him stay. He's too toxic to allow around children, but frankly, the way you talk about him is pretty harsh. I suspect his issues may be connected to the divorce and the way he's been treated. He was pretty young when you divorced his mom, if you've been married 17 years, and you married someone closer to his age than yours. Now you've got a shiny new family, and you have no place in your life for the loser son you're sick of. He's really just living up to the expectations you've probably expressed to him more than once, and he needs therapy. ESH, the fact that your son was thrown out of his apartment because there was a fight and the police were called is reason enough to not let him stay with you. So why did you feel the need to unload your domestic troubles? Seems to be more here. Next story. So, my twin brother, male 23, and his girlfriend, female 21, are going to have a baby, and they found out that it's going to be a girl. So, when they were asked about what they would name their baby, they said that they were planning on naming the baby Amelia. Now, I wasn't happy about this, but I wanted to give them a chance to explain themselves, so I asked why they would give their baby that name. My brother's girlfriend said that she has a coworker with that name and that she loved it because of how unique and quirky it is. This really upsets me, and her reasoning for giving her that name made me even more angry because I was hoping to name a future daughter of mine Amelia after a late childhood friend who passed away from cancer when we were 12. Her name is extremely important to me because Amelia and I made a promise that if she was going to pass away, I would name my daughter after her so that she can be remembered and would officially be part of my family. It's even worse, in my opinion, because this is no secret and my brother knows about that promise. And I have talked about it multiple times beforehand. So I voiced my disagreement over the name and told them why I didn't like for them to give their baby that name and asked if there was any way that we can pick a different name for their baby. But they told me that I was being entitled about it and said that they weren't going to change their minds about it because I don't have the right to claim the name, especially since they were having a daughter first, and they don't know if I'll ever have a daughter in the future, anyways. My brother did try to compromise by stating that he'll be the one to uphold that promise for me and that he'll make sure that Amelia will be properly remembered. But I told him that won't work because I was the one that Amelia asked to make that promise. And it wasn't going to be the same since he never made that same promise to her. However, at the end, they insisted on naming their future daughter Amelia, and I just walked away in anger over the whole thing. I haven't talked to them for about a week, and I've been intentionally avoiding them because I really don't want to deal with them. But friends and family are telling me that they are really disappointed in me that I'm acting so childish and to get over myself over a name, and to apologize to my brother and his girlfriend over making a scene about it. AITA, and should I apologize to them? I normally do not agree with saving a name, but in your case, and the meaning and your brother knowing this, you are NTA. But may I offer a suggestion for you to keep your promise? Amélie is the original French version of the name, and Amalia is the German, and Delia is the Greek. They are all beautiful, like your friendship with your friend, but gives your baby something just a little unique so she can have a little of her own as well. Also, I'm a bit petty, so I would call their baby Amy or some other variation. Name your child Amelia and tell her why she was named that, and she will know how important that is. It is very sweet and loving for you to do that. NTA because I can understand the anger and pain behind it. The difference between you and your brother is that his child is named after a coworker while yours has a very special meaning. And yeah, I don't care if I sound petty. If the family starts issues, there's always your future partner side of the family. Yeah, of course, you can gatekeep a name, but your name has more meaning for your future child. Just imagine telling your future daughter stories about your best friend and let her know how special she will be to have that name. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.